Last year's successful court appeal by residents of Maryland and Summerhill has thrown a spanner in the works for council. The present dump site at Shortland is running out quickly, and now the new site has been put on hold by the Land and Environment Court. The recommendation to tonight's meeting is that council proceed with the Summerhill development and carry out the environmental impact statement which was neglected last time. But even if council does decide to stay with the Summerhill site, it will still take 3 years to bring it online. To maximise the life of the Shortland dump, council is likely to split the waste stream.
To preserve the capacity we've got in our existing dump sites, we'll only put putrescent waste in there, that stuff that rots away and so on, in that dump, and we'll go somewhere else for things like bricks and old concrete and soil.
That somewhere is likely to be the former Walls End brickwork site. Maryland residents say they'll continue to fight against the Summerhill proposal, making it difficult for council to go ahead with the development. Newcastle Council, though, hasn't ruled out using the old Stockrington mine site as a waste facility. A proposal is before the state government, which could see most of Sydney and the Hunters' waste transported there by rail.
If we could economically get all of Sydney's waste into a single place, near enough to us to transport our waste to it, that'd answer it, and we could do it because it's
This motel was bought some years ago and was to be transformed into a hostel for frail and elderly Aborigines. Planners hoped it would provide 17 much-needed beds for the elderly. But despite a capital grant to cover the renovations needed to create an aged hostel, the project has come to a standstill.
Unfortunately, at this stage, we've just gone as far as the drawing plans. We haven't gone to tender yet for the project.
A lack of funding to cover operating costs has thwarted planners and forced them to put the project on hold. In a bid to at least get the hostel running, they've considered a number of alternatives, including cutting the number of beds.
We would certainly consider going back to 8 or 9 to cut down on the costs, so there are a lot of things we'd have to consider before we even started it.
But reluctant to cut back, planners are hoping Aged Family and Health Services Minister Peter Staples will consider their plight.
We'd like to let him know that you know there's a problem at the moment with Aboriginal hostels in New South Wales, and basically it's because that the other part that provides funds just don't have the funds to match the capital grant side.
The Hunters Ambulance Service received medals and plaques for long service and outstanding achievements. Also present were 4 people who owe their lives to the prompt work of ambulance officers and a new piece of equipment, the portable defibrillator. Alma Skilton collapsed at home early on the 23rd of December.
The paramedics arrived and did their wonderful job. Away I went.
Ambulance officers Peter Johansson and Terry Westlake had no doubt the defibrillator would do the job.
It's really refreshing to know that you can actually see it be successful. So it's such a warm feeling, it's unbelievable.
Maitland Police District Superintendent Rick Kane presented a plaque in recognition of the work of ambulance officers at the Dungog Hostel fire, where 12 people died.
It was a chaotic situation that we all hope that never happens again.
It's all in a day's work for the ambulance service, but even they admit that the occasional recognition makes all the difference. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
We've been dubbed a throwaway society. Every day our stockpiles of rubbish grow higher. David Curtis says plastic bags supply a large part of those stockpiles and has launched an appeal to minimise their use.
Plastic bags contribute something like 30% of the volume of landfill. And we feel the best way of approaching it would be to actually charge people for the bags In that way, that's a good incentive for people to take their own bag shopping, and this occurs in other countries.
According to Mr Curtis, recycling schemes are helping, but he says the ultimate solution to our plastic bag problem is to take them out of the system. He maintains there are alternatives.
We've only had plastic shopping bags for a relatively short period, only 10 years or so, and we've become very reliant on them. But you know, there's a lot of people now take their own bags shopping, but there also are shopping bags that are manufactured from recycled papers, which I think are a good alternative also.
Conservation and Lands Management Minister Gary West officially opened the site for TreeFest and immediately got into the spirit of things. After showing his tree planting skills, the minister shared his opinion of the tree planting enthusiasm of locals.
There are landholders here in the New England that I think are really leading Australia in terms of understanding the importance of trees in farm management, understanding their important role in land degradation or turning around land degradation, and something that we've got a problem with right throughout much of Australia, and that's dry land salinity.
The Tree Festival will take place in the heart of what was dieback country in the mid-80s. Thousands of trees have already been planted by landholders and landcare groups, 120,000 on the TreeFest site alone. It's hoped TreeFest from March the 18th to the 20th will help people wanting to plant many more.
This TreeFest program that we're launching today is really about identifying with those people and encouraging them in to see the latest techniques and the latest varieties that can be used by a lot of experts that will be drawn in to talk to people.
For 18-year-old Chad, the road to pro surfing is a mixture of hard slog and pure fun. A member of the elite Merriweather Board Riders Club, he's emulating the feats of another local, Mark Richards, who began his career after dominating the national amateur ranks. And with Chad, it's a case of just getting better each year.
Went in the contest last year and got second, so my aims and goals this year were to become number one at the Aussie titles.
With a national title comes a higher public profile, but Chad isn't hanging around to soak up the adulation. He's off to Hawaii on Sunday for 3 weeks, time off from the constant training and competition schedule.
Yeah, just free surf and relax, get into some big waves.
But with the holiday over, it's back to the grindstone, preparing for the World Amateur titles in France in September. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Bishop of Newcastle, the Right Reverend Alfred Holland, is guest preacher at Sunday's historic service, an event that should go ahead despite the arguments of staunch parishioners.
If women can be baptised and worship and serve in the church, so they ought, in fairness, be able to minister as priests too.
The Bishop believes Newcastle should contribute to the change and is planning a special synod in the diocese in March. This involves representative clergy and lay people from the diocese's 70 parishes deciding on whether special legislation should be enacted to allow the area's 9 and, as of Saturday, 10 deacons to be ordained priests.
I think it's a very healthy way to proceed. It would be good for the Bishop to have the support for from the whole diocese which the synod represents.
For the diocese's first female deacon, Julia Perry, the change is a long time coming. Church restraints she's endured over her 5 years have caused some frustrations.
I may not absolve sins, I may not bless the people, and I may not consecrate the elements of bread and wine at Holy Communion. If I've led the service, I've preached, we come to the altar, the bread and wine are on the altar, I have to step back, the priest steps in and does that particular portion.
All going to plan, Deacon Julia and her colleagues will be priests by mid-April. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Three years ago, Nillo Infant School was threatened with closure. Today, the school provided the backdrop for the launching of the Maitland area's hotline. Initially, the reception wasn't warm, with the school's principal refusing access past the gate and questioning the motivation of Mr Aquilina's presence. With the Maitland area now the most marginal seat in New South Wales and the possibility of a general election being called any time, residents can expect a barrage of political attention. The state opposition sees education as a major electoral issue and a vital ingredient to winning government. With sentiments exchanged, Mr Aquilina explained the benefits of his brainchild.
Basically, we want to find out from parents precisely how their children are being affected in the new school year.
An educational hotline has been operating in the Sydney metropolitan area for 3 years. Now 6 are being set up in regional areas throughout the state during the next fortnight. Mr Aquilina says input helps to formulate educational policies and right existing wrongs.
Well, Maitland schools are suffering, just like every other school in the state, specifically from overcrowding in classrooms and also from the increase in the numbers of composite classes.
Despite good intentions, the need for the hotline has been questioned.
Well, we have the facilities and the resources here to handle educational matters that come to our attention, and I doubt if that can be handled through a hotline.
The hotline will operate throughout February. The Maitland number is 341270.
Airsea rescue has come a long way since the arrival of the helicopter. Plucking a man from the ocean is such a familiar operation that it can safely be performed before a crowd of onlookers. But behind these doors in Newcastle East lies evidence of a very different time, when taking out a lifeline was no easy matter. The horse-drawn rocket cart was once state-of-the-art technology in the late 1800s. When a ship foundered on Newcastle's coastline, the cart would carry rockets to the beach where they'd be fired out to the rolling decks, carrying in their wake a line to shore. Newcastle's rocket cart was all but forgotten until a team of history buffs from RAF Base Williamtown volunteered to restore it. The rocket cart served as a last desperate measure in sea rescue right up to its last operation in 1914. Despite decades of decay, it's still in remarkably good condition.
It's in better condition than we thought from the description we had, and we're hoping that we can make it look nice and shiny again.
The RAF restoration team says the work will take many months, but when the cart is completed, it will be taken up to the Maritime Museum in Fort Scratchley to be reunited with the rocket launcher, already on display there. Tom Hilston, NBN News. Mayor Carley held private talks with resort developer Noel Gordon late yesterday, centring on Gordon Pacific's ability to meet the construction deadline set by council. Under the terms of the development application, work on a sector of the resort planned for the lakeside of Caves Beach must begin by March. Mr Carley says that he's been given assurances that the developers are in a financial position to carry out the work.
Noel Gordon has satisfied me that the application that is before council at the moment, that is the golf course on the lakeside, will proceed.
The lakefront development represents only a small part of the overall Caves Beach resort proposal. The larger golf course, clubhouse, villa units and five-star hotel planned for the ocean side of the site are still a long way from reality.
Noel Gordon is convinced that the project will come to fruition.
What's your view?
My view is one that is rather sceptical.
Speaking in Sydney, Mr Gordon today reaffirmed his company's commitment to completing the entire resort proposal, although he conceded that it may be some years before the necessary investors are found. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Two years after the earthquake, the grandstands remain untouched. State and federal governments are still discussing Newcastle City Council's submission for a $2 million grant from the Natural Disaster Relief Fund to build a new stand. Council expects a reply by mid-February. The current impasse has cost the community and cricket dearly.
Last year we showed a $15,000 loss because we installed some practice wickets at a cost of $8,000 at the requirement of the Australian Cricket Board, and we face that cost. And we used to rely on the income from the Sheffield Shield matches and the international games.
Council too has become frustrated.
The big disadvantage to this region is, and where I must confess to being a little bit annoyed about the government's being so slow on it, is that we've already missed out a Sheffield Shield game.
But the Lord Mayor admits the claim is a tricky one. The Natural Disaster Relief Fund has no guidelines for earthquake damage. Despite the complexity, Alderman McNaughton is confident of a green light from the Greiner government. But on the chance it turns red,
we'll have to demolish one of the stands altogether and do a patch-up job on the other one and try and get back into the business as best we can.
This way, a new stand would be years down the track, but left to the cricketing community, things would be different.
So I think the Newcastle City Council should bite the bullet now and go ahead and build one good grandstand to do us. Bite the bullet. If we've got to go for a loan, go for a government loan.
If all goes to plan, the Lord Mayor expects a new grandstand to be built by the end of the year, providing hope for Newcastle as a venue for a World Cup and Sheffield Shield fixture next year.
Concerned residents claim there have been 15 near drownings that they know of so far this summer. The deceptively calm beach is notorious for rips, submerged wrecks and shifting sandbars, where inexperienced swimmers soon find themselves out of their depths. In a recent incident, Peter Mansbridge rescued 2 young girls being swept out to sea.
And I could see a man running around the beach yelling and screaming, can someone go and save his girls? I just ran out into the water, started swimming out to pick them up.
While the council has planted tank traps to divert four-wheel drives around bathers in the hope of avoiding accidents on shore, the residents claim a lookout or surf club is needed to safeguard swimmers.
It's got to be done now, not next year. It's got to be done now.
The possibility is there going to be a serious accident one day with the amount of people that come to the beach now and the four-wheel drives, surfers, paddleboard riders, they're all here now.
The nearest patrolled beaches are kilometres away and it takes rescue boats from Port Stephens 40 minutes to arrive in the event of an emergency. The residents will take their call for beach patrols to the Surf Lifesaving Association and the Shire Council.
We're hoping in about 3 weeks' time to call a public meeting and get everyone out and have the councillors there for the public meeting. So paperwork first, and then hoping we'll be able to do something with a life-saving club up here.
A pack of about 50 hammerhead sharks up to 3 metres in length was spotted off Merewether Beach this morning. A group of surf club nippers along with other swimmers were ordered from the water. The alarm also sounded at nearby Dixon Park Beach.
Well, the swimmers were told to swim at their own risk after the shark alarm had been set off.
Merewether Beach remained closed for 3 hours with the shark warning flag hoisted. Late this afternoon, the rescue helicopter and surf club IRBs confirmed the sharks were still in the area.
The Toronto railway station has been unused since 1989, when the state government closed down the Toronto to Fassifern line. Since then, the station has been badly vandalised, becoming a hangout for local drug addicts. But it's set for a new life now after the state government today handed over the keys to the Lake Macquarie and District Historical Society. The government has spent $20,000 repairing the exterior of the building and will lease the station to the society for a peppercorn rent of $5 a week. The lease is for the next 10 years, and it's hoped by that time a decision will have been made on the future of the rail line corridor.
There's been proposals for it to be a greenway, which is a cycle path and a walkway up to Fassifern, and also a proposal for light rail. From my own point of view, I think that we should look carefully at this greenway proposal.
For the society, all the hard work has finally paid off.
We haven't anything here very much for our heritage, so what little we have we must keep.
Errol Samuel is in charge of the liquid waste division of the Waste Management Authority. He's concerned that only 250 tonnes of industrial liquid waste are disposed of each year from the Hunter region, a meagre amount compared to the 41,000 tonnes disposed of from the Illawarra area. It's a figure which defies explanation, especially when the industrial base at Wollongong is smaller than in Newcastle. So where is all the waste going?
I don't know. That's a very baffling question.
The situation is of such concern that Mr. Samuel is calling for an urgent investigation into the matter. And he's not alone in believing the waste is out there. Cleanaway wants to build a waste treatment facility on Kooragang Island, which would treat 41 million litres of liquid waste a year from the region. Why would a company spend millions of dollars building a plant to treat waste which doesn't exist? Mr. Samuel says there's no doubt some local industries are dumping liquid waste illegally, and he's issued a stern warning to those who persist.
It would cost the owners of those sites a lot of money. That's if they were discharging this waste onto the ground, or if it was discharged into a water course, you're evidently going to end up with polluted water.
Meet the new batch, the men who will take on a thankless task, who will not buckle under the wrath of 6-year-olds when the whistle goes for offside. For 10 nights they'll sit through this classroom course, armed only with a copy of the referee's law chart. Some will then join the ranks of the Macquarie Referees branch, a branch with plenty on its plate this season. The District Juniors, the Junior Super League, the Northern New South Wales Women's State League, just to name a few. Monday, March 9th is exam time. If they pass the test, these aspiring whistleblowers could be the men in the middle the following Saturday.
Looking forward to her 93rd birthday on Sunday, Maria Tamashi has developed a solid philosophy on life.
I always had to look at life flexibly and to try to think wisely.
It's that flexible approach which prompted Mrs. Tamashi to leave her homeland of Hungary 4 years ago to move to Australia. Today, the final step of that journey was taken. Surrounded by 4 generations of her family, Mrs. Tamashi became an Australian citizen in a special ceremony at the Department of Immigration's Hunter office. Having lived through 2 world wars and the Soviet invasion of her country, Mrs. Tamashi has learnt to be flexible. But now she's enjoying life in her adopted country and working at getting her tongue around English, Aussie style. Liliana Velikovic, who was awarded an Australia Day medal today for her services to the Department of Immigration, says Mrs. Tamashi's naturalisation marks a new milestone for the Hunter office.
She's one of our oldest applicants. We haven't had one in the 90s for a number of years up here.
Mayfield residents and Cleanaway presented their opposing cases to Newcastle Council this morning at a special access meeting. As well as concerns about site selection and proximity to residential areas, residents voiced doubt about the need for such a facility in Newcastle.
A new look banner for a new look Falcons. Aboard the vintage steam ferry, the South Stein, players and officials witnessed the latest in a string of changes. New owners, new colours, a new coach, a soon-to-be completed new home court, and now a new name, the Foster's Falcons, and a new challenge, the $50,000 3-on-3 competition in Adelaide. This half-court spin-off is fast and furious, 3-a-side, 7-minute halves. The top NBL and South Eastern League sides will be there February 14th and 15th. That's when the new Newcastle will be put to its first test.
Gary Swan was checking machinery at the ore crushing plant at New England Antimony Mines at Hillgrove around 7:30 this morning. His left arm became entangled in moving parts and was severed near the elbow. Staff at the mines were able to retrieve the limb. After initial treatment on site by the mine's first aid officer, Swan was rushed to Armidale Hospital where his condition was stabilised. He was then airlifted to Sydney's Prince of Wales Hospital for microsurgery. Hospital staff say Swan is in a stable condition.
Michael Vincent Rory and Ray Smith, who live in Port Macquarie, are preparing for the Ameriflora exhibition in Columbus, Ohio. This is a sample of Michael Vincent's work. The canvas is made from buffalo, kangaroo and sheep hides. He uses a soldering iron to bring his designs to life. Ray Smith carves Aboriginal designs on emu eggs. He estimates it takes about 30 or 40 hours to complete each egg.
With emu eggs, they range from $50 up to $600, depending on what type of work's been put onto them.
The two artists will leave for the United States in April, where they'll exhibit their work for 6 months.
Powerboats were a feature of the three-day carnival on the Manning at the end of last month. Now the organising committee wants to incorporate other aquatic features in next year's event. The details were outlined by the event's managing director, Lynn Schneider.
Tried to bring the festival back to what it was. I think a couple of years ago we tried to get too big, too grand a scale, and that's where we ran into problems. But by bringing it back to what the people want to see and getting people on the river bank is what it's all about. We even discussed last night the possibility of bringing in canoeing next year, maybe looking at water skiing, a few more on-water activities, so that people who are down there on the riverbank have a complete day of entertainment, you know, from 8 o'clock in the morning through till 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Most of the victims were soldiers in a minibus blown apart by terrorists. The government says it's the work of Basque independence fighters. The group has threatened to disrupt the Summer Olympics in Barcelona. A breakdown in law and order at a courtroom in the American state of Alabama. The family of a teenage murder victim took matters into their own hands when the 15-year-old killer was sentenced to only 12 months in jail. Several members of the family have been charged over the incident. The other woman in Britain's latest political sex scandal has come out into the open.
Making herself available to be photographed this morning in the light of the wholly inappropriate coverage of this matter in some of this morning's newspapers.
Tricia Howard had an affair 5 years ago with Liberal Democrats leader Paddy Ashdown while she was working as his secretary. It was only made public after letters were stolen from the office of Ashdown's solicitor. But far from damaging him politically, opinion polls show the scandal and his honesty about it have boosted Ashdown's approval rating by up to 3%. The motorist pulled off Woy Woy Road into a dirt track which leads to the Carryong Scout Camp. 250 metres later, he saw the body face up in a shallow ditch and contacted police.
A fellow came down this bush track and located a body laying in a hole approximately 2 foot deep. It's appears to be a male body at this stage, completely unidentifiable. It's going to be conveyed to Glebe Forensic for examination.
At this stage, police believe the dead man is aged between 15 and 40, about 174 centimetres tall and of slim build. He was wearing a long-sleeved blue and white striped collared shirt with jeans and a belt with a Harley-Davidson buckle and black shoes. Police say they may have to rely on fingerprint or dental information to identify him.
Months of dry weather combined with this week's heavy rain has stormwater channels swelling.
The dry spell meant a lot of waste is gathered both in our stormwater drains, on our roads and on our land. And the first heavy rain washes all that material down into our rivers, onto our beaches.
Attempting to alleviate some of the problem, Hunter Waste is trialling trash racks. These are placed in stormwater channels and are designed to trap surface waste. If successful, more will be placed around the city's stormwater drains. But Mr Broad says some waste still slips through, and this is what causes the high readings. He says since stage 1 of the Burwood Beach Outfall was built almost 3 years ago, pollution levels at the majority of Newcastle beaches have dropped. But this week, Glenrock and Little Swansea beaches gave readings almost 200 points over what's considered safe for swimming.
We are concerned that the sewage system may be failing at the back of Glenrock.
Mr Broad says the situation is being investigated. Another area of pollution constantly being monitored is the city's dust levels. A Newcastle City Council survey has found Tyers Hill and Mayfield to be the dirtiest suburbs, with readings 50% above the target level of 4 milligrams of dust per cubic metre per month. Hamilton ranked third highest out of 9 sites tested. Katara rated the city's cleanest.